I told you when I was a kid that I had two brothers, John and Daniel, growing up. My mom used to have to cart the three of us around in an old station wagon. We called it Old Woody. It was a 1970 Chevrolet Kingswood. It was a pale fading yellow, and it had the old, fake wooden sides, that always were peeling off. And unfortunately, my dad was, shall we say, a little bit frugal. And for some reason, he had this belief that you should never drive a car that was made in the same decade. And so there my mom was, driving three rowdy kids around in 1980. But luckily for her, there was actually an innovation underneath the dash. That 1970 Kingswood had an 8-track tape player in it. The 8-track tape player was invented in the late 50s and early 60s, but it really didn't start to get its momentum until 1963, when a gentleman named Bill Lear decided that he wanted to put music in his new Jets. And so now, what's wrong? What's the problem with taking music with you? Well, you can't take a record player in the car or on a plane. And a reel-to-reel tape player, the two little reels that used to run between, if you think texting while driving is a bit unsafe, imagine having to thread a reel-to-reel tape player. It was ridiculous. So what they had discovered was how to take two reels and make them into a single reel that just went continuously. And it was a simple cassette you could pop in the machine. And Bill Lear and his team at Lear Jet introduced the first commercial 8-track tape player. And it was a huge success. Just a couple years later, Bentley and Rolls-Royce offered them in their vehicles. By 1965, if you were in one of the world's top luxury transportation, you had an 8-track tape player with you. By 1967, even people like my dad could get one. Ford offered them in every vehicle. By 1970, the 8-track tape was the #1 consumer electronics product in the world. Now I want you to imagine for a moment. Imagine that you were a CEO of an 8-track tape company in 1965. You've got the revenues increasing, your profits increasing. What would you be investing in? Would you be investing in maybe some new salespeople, maybe some new marketing? Maybe you'd be investing in making the 8-track better. How many of you would be thinking about obsoleting your #1 product? Thinking about obsoleting the 8-track? Hold your thought, and we'll come back to it. Every decade for the past 50 years, the dominant technology has been obsoleted, gone. Why was that? Was it because people didn't realize where the new value was, that somehow the market shifted? No. Everybody knew exactly what they wanted. They wanted a compact music source that had great quality. They wanted it smaller and better. That was it. So why was it that the companies that were making 8-tracks didn't switch? Well, remember before I asked you if you were the CEO, would you invest in obsoleting your #1 product? You probably said, no way. Well, that's exactly what many of these companies thought. The people making the 8-tracks, they weren't thinking about how to get rid of it. The cassette manufacturers were. And Sony and Philips, when they introduced the compact disc, they were trying to get rid of the record player. They probably didn't see that it was going to kill their cassette business. And then why didn't Sony and Philips invest in obsoleting the CD? Because they weren't focused on that. But the MP3 player was. I say that every company needs two COOs, a chief operating officer and a chief obsolescence officer. Somebody who's focused on obsoleting your products. Now, this doesn't mean you should stop right away and go obsolete everything, but you should have somebody back in your company right now who's thinking about how do we obsolete our best product? Because that's exactly what your competition is thinking about. Think back now. Is there somebody back in your company thinking about how to obsolete your own product? If there's not, maybe you're just making 8-track tapes.